What's up, friends, and welcome into Betting Pros. It is the Week 4 college football early line look ahead. We are going to be breaking down all the early lines. Where's the values? What are the bets that we're getting in? Because last week, cash money, that Tulane under. I hope you listened. I am Chris Welsh. You can find me on Twitter at @IsItTheWelsh. That is Thor Nystrom, Thor KU on the X, on the Twitter. It is just the two of us for this go round, just like old school, like last year. Thor, we're going to get through all the games. I think the biggest talk was the team that did not cover, but is now 3-0. Colorado almost dropped the bag. They definitely dropped the bag on the betting department. They didn't come remotely close to covering, but they went into that double OT. They were able to win. They're 3-0, and they are going to be a topic of conversation for this week. But it almost was a huge, epic disaster. I thought that Colorado was winning by 75 after the comments about the hat and the helmet. I was ready to ladder bet that thing to 40. Thank God I didn't. And they just came out kind of stagnant in the beginning. I know we've been talking about Colorado at the beginning of the show, but they've been each of the last couple shows, but they've been the most exciting college football team in the land.
And they got, I didn't think they were going to get caught in the look ahead to Oregon, but they clearly did. Colorado State was the team that came out in that one inspired, maybe a little too inspired. Colorado State got flagged for a whole bunch of penalties, and that brutal cheap shot that knocked out sent Travis Hunter to the hospital. And Travis Hunter going to miss multiple games. That's something you're going to need to keep in mind. As far as Colorado goes, after the game, Dion had a great take saying losing Travis Hunter is like losing two elite players. You lose an elite shutdown corner on the one side. You lose an elite wide receiver on the other side. That one hurts Colorado, especially, heading into this week against Oregon. But I was impressed with Colorado State outside of the players, some of those lapses of discipline and outside of Jay Norvell's game management. But that team played really hard. And they also had a good game plan. Not great in-game decisions by Norvell, but a really good game plan to try to combat, especially that Colorado passing attack, which needed a long time to get going in that game. So I definitely upgraded Colorado State this week in the power rankings. I did knock down Colorado, also taking into consideration Travis Hunter missing the next couple weeks. But yeah, it was great theater last night. That's for sure.
I will also say that one key thing that did happen was proof in point about, now, though we didn't actually need it, but proof in point of locking into the early line look ahead show when we were able to get that Tulane Southern Miss line, which again, I think it was irrelevant after the fact, but we saw that thing drop by 4 points from when we were early talking about it. So getting into some of those early lines, definitely key, definitely important before the movement starts happening. And that is what we are going to do today. So hopefully Thor can win us some more money with another one of those money calls. That's the Thor's hammer. I don't know if you had, did you have a Thor's hammer?
I did, and it was
Saturday
also the same one, the Tulane Southern Miss under. Even though it had come down at that point from when we bet it, what was it, 4 points, 4.5 points by the time it was right before kickoff on Saturday. But it was that was still a fire. So yeah. And to your point, Welsh, there are not every game that you get early in the week with the line value, whatnot, is that line value going to come into play. That one cashed easy, all numbers. But, we mentioned a couple weeks ago that Utah game against Baylor, where if you would bet it early in the week on Utah to lay the points, you won your ticket. If you bet late in the week, you lost it because it was the difference between Utah -6.5 and -7.5 in a 7-point win. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do here is just take convert a couple potential losing tickets late in the week into winning tickets by getting it early.
All right, well, perfect transition. Let's get into these bad boys. Let's start breaking down these games, giving you an early look and where some of these advantages can take place. Let's kick it over to Saturday. Got a lot of the rank stuff. At the end, we are going to look at a few other adjustments compared to the early lines versus Thor's adjusted line, maybe some other games that Thor is kind of in on. But we're going to start with a lot of the big ones, and we've got 3-0 Rutgers going into the week. Number 2, Michigan, who's also 3-0. There's a little bit of a discrepancy on your line versus the spread, which might equate to a little bit of value, but you tell me if about 1.5 of value is worthwhile betting on Michigan.
For me, I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, my adjusted line, like you're mentioning, it's Michigan minus 25.9. But that's the correct way to set that line. I think initially putting it over that 24. I mean, like Yeah, theoretical, maybe 1.5 of line value for Michigan, but it's not over a key number. I'm probably not going to end up betting that game just because Rutgers has looked better than we've thought so far. And they were a team that interested me over the offseason because we knew they had good running backs. We knew they had a solid offensive line, and their defense has been good since Shiano got back there. It was just like, is Gavin Wimsatt going to be Artur Sikowski too, except with mobility? And Wimsatt has been a bit better this year, certainly than we've been way better this year than he was last year. But last year he was unplayable, so that makes Rutgers a bit more viable. Michigan, they played their procession of patsies in the non-conference, and Jim Harbaugh was off. Now Jim Harbaugh going to be coming back. I don't know that matters much. Last week, some people were, getting on Michigan a little bit for not crushing Bowling Green by more points. McCarthy, to start out that game, had a little bit of struggles. He threw an interception and whatnot, but you're just playing around with Bowling Green because you're about to get into the Big Ten schedule. So that's one I wouldn't touch right now.
So there's nothing that could adjust, or there's nothing that could happen that's going to get you in on that game. You don't think?
If it got to, this would have to be a lot, but if it somehow got up to Rutgers, if I could get 28 with Rutgers kickoff, that's what I'd be looking to do. But I just don't know that I want to lay that many points with Michigan against a team in this Rutgers team that plays tough. They, like I said, have a good defense, and they're trying to shorten the game. And that's sort of Michigan's prerogative too. So it's just one that I wouldn't touch right now. I think Rutgers is better than we've come accustomed to these last several years.
All right. Moving on to the next. This is going to be a really interesting one. I'm going to be interested to hear your take. You've got going into last week, week 3's number 17 Ole Miss. We got to wait for the new rankings, going up against number 10 Alabama. The spreads open up at a touchdown. Your line does not speak to the same, and Alabama is playing some not good football, right? Some uninspired football, and your adjusted line kind of tells that story. I'm looking here. This might be the biggest differential as far as what we capped on the big games here, Thor, of what the Thor adjusted line compared to what Vegas is putting out. So you're going to bet against Bama?
For sure. Again. Yeah. It is bet against Bama season. And I talked about this over the summer that Bama was going to be an early season and maybe even full season fade. My biggest ticket in the futures market is Alabama under 10.5 wins, which if South Florida played just a little bit better in that game, we'd already be home on that one. We only need one more Alabama loss and we're home on that one. Alabama has even, I was the lowest probably on Alabama of anybody out there this summer. They've been even worse than I thought they were going to be. And the stuff that we talked about was over the summer was their offensive line wasn't great last year. It hadn't improved over the offseason. Same thing with the receiving core, which stunk last year. They hadn't brought in anybody to augment that. And then it's like you lose Jahmyr Gibbs at the running back position. You've downgraded there. And then they don't have a quarterback. The reason they went out and signed Tyler Buckner in, I think, April, is right around when the draft was happening. It was because it was after spring practices where Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe had both badly struggled. And so obviously Nick Saban had brought in Tommy Rees to be the offensive coordinator, the former offensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So Tommy called up his old pal Tyler Buckner, who had lost his job because Notre Dame signed Sam Hartman, of course, earlier in the winter, and said, "Come on down, you can win this job." None of those three guys are inspiring options. They're just not. Those guys should be starting at low level P5 or even high level G5. In my opinion, that's what Buckner is. Milroe, somewhere around there. He should be in a different system, though. You just don't get the passing element with him. Simpson might be their best bet going forward. He played a bit, yesterday, whatnot. But that one's tough too. He was their third option. He's been their third option. He became the break glass in case of emergency guy. And then Alabama defense is down too. So it's just a tough situation there. What we see, maybe yesterday against South Florida was a bit of an aberration. That was sort of a weird spot in terms of how close that was until late. But the overall struggles of this team is absolutely no aberration at all. I expect this to be a trend going forward. This game is a fire for me right now with where this line is. My line was it Bama
minus 4.
Bama -4 in Tuscaloosa. Right now, the live line is Alabama -7. If you can get 7 points with Ole Miss, you take that. Ole Miss has given Alabama some trouble with better Alabama teams. This is Lane Kiffin's shot. Now, to go into the backyard of his former mentor, the guy in Nick Saban, who was able to rehabilitate Lane Kiffin's image and get him back into the head coaching industry, right? That's when he went down to Florida Atlantic and then Ole Miss. Now, Kiffin has been very close to being able to knock off Saban. I think this is the game here. And going into Tuscaloosa, and yeah.
Well, you were leading to what I think everybody wants to know, and I'm going to ask, you going to sprinkle that money line? You going to sprinkle that Ole Miss? Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And I want that money line priced around that 7. But even, if people out there listen to this and it's already come down, yeah, I would still take the point, still take the money line wherever it is. Cause we're 3 points over what my line is right now. And Alabama, they are susceptible right now. That's a team who is in danger. And Ole Miss is certainly going to be motivated to go in there. Lane Kiffin's going to have something ready for Nick.
And I can tell you, we record this on Sunday afternoon. That line, I see a couple spots where it's 6.5 already. So make your move if it's adjusting or if it's flying around 6.5, 7. Try to get that hook when you can, or the opposite end of that hook, so you can get to 7 if you want to play the full spread. Maybe you want to live on the wild side and go with Lane and play that money line. I knew you would. That's why I was excited to ask you. I knew that. When you go to the Betting Pros app, which you guys should all go and check out. We've talked about it a bunch with the Betting Pros tracker. Download the free Betting Pros app on iOS or Android. You can follow your favorite experts like Thor, top-rated bettors that are on hot streaks, and you can get instant notifications when new bets are placed. What I love is you can have the custom notifications, which you can get alerts for only high ROI markets that person bets on. And you can do all of this with Thor. And I tell you every single week, I have a system of a couple things I do. Talk to my buddy Bogman. I read his article that comes out on Betting Pros. I read Thor's article, but then right around Friday night when I'm dialing in, getting comfortable for Saturday, I go on the Betting Pros app. I click who I follow, I click Thor, and I look through what the bets are looking like. And you can see those little sprinkles, and you'll see those money line sprinkles. And I know I'm going to see that Ole Miss one. If you guys actually might see it by the time that you're listening, so that line doesn't move too much. So go to the your app store today, and you can download the Betting Pros app and get locked in with all your favorite people.
I'm furiously logging into all my books right now, Welsh, to see if I can find a 7 out there. The one I got is 6.5 that it's hung right now, but I'm going to try to find a 7.
We'll see if it moves around. You guys got to get your all set up with your 7s, hopefully, not just 6.5. Or if it moves down, that's the other danger. Is there going to be? Oh man, never mind. I was going to say, is there a world where the line comes down where you are betting Bama? But if we're sprinkling the money line on Ole Miss, it's
no chance. No, even if that thing got to 3.5, I don't want to lay points with Bama against a really good team. I don't like this Bama team. I don't. And there's a lot of different ways the game scripts can go where all of a sudden Bama becomes feeble, depending on the quarterback who's in, right? With Milroe, if Alabama, if they're playing from ahead, it's one way and he can do that. But if they come for, if it's playing from behind, it's the opposite. They're impotent in that thing. With the other two kids, what you're concerned about is the pressure, right? You can augment, and maybe this is why they went with Milroe out of the gate. You can sort of protect yourself or inoculate yourself to a degree from the offensive line struggles with Milroe's mobility, but then you totally lose the passing element. With the other two guys, they are not terribly, they're much better passers, but they are not great under pressure. We've seen that South Florida was getting after those guys, and sacked both of them. So yeah, I'm not betting Bama in this game. We're all over Ole Miss.
If Ole Miss wins, Bama Twitter is going to be it's going to be a whirlwind, a tornado of bad takes.
And I'm going to call my bookie with that 10.5 ticket on Bama the under and say, pay me my money.
Just pay it now. Cash it now. All right. Let's go over to a couple other. We got a lot of ranked versus ranked games this week. Going in, UCLA was ranked 24th, going off against number 12, Utah. Both teams are 3-0, and we have around 2.5 points of value. It looks like on Utah, according to the adjusted line for you, Thor. So is this going to be something you want to smash before this line starts moving? What do you think?
The only thing is looking into see if we got any shot on Keithy and Rising. Um, so far they're 3-0 with those guys. It's always the case where you feel better if they play, but we just don't know when they're going to come back. But yeah, I mean, I think either way with where that line is, I think I'd be on Utah. I'd just be more comfortable if them guys were playing. But your issue here for UCLA, a team that I was more bullish on. I have an over on the 8 or 8.5, whatever it was in the preseason, whatnot. And they're a very interesting team with Dante Moore there. But it's like because all the other positions outside of quarterback had improved. I guess running back to an extent as well. But it's just they basically lost DTR and then Charbonnet, but everybody else came back, whatnot. And you were just wondering what was going to go on with the quarterback room. They did okay in the running back room, bringing in Carson Steele, and then you had Harden coming back, whatnot. But Moore's in there. But now you have this situation where even though Moore is super talented, Moore is going to play in the NFL someday. Like that kid is super duper talented. But now you're in, what is this, his second college start, and you have to go and play a road game at Utah against that ridiculous defense. Utah's offense, until Rising and Keithy come back, they just have to manufacture stuff. So, that's what the fear is, right? But like Dante Moore against that Utah defense on the road, that's where it gets kind of tough for me. So yeah, like if I can lay less than 6 with Utah, that's what I'm looking to do in that game, regardless of the statuses of Rising and Keithy. But feel way better if we have them back.
If it's at 6, are you going to play UCLA? Because I'm already seeing 6 like this early, like this much of an line. So will you lay 6 with the UCLA, or like what side are you going to take out
with
6?
Utah? Yeah,
with Utah. Okay,
yeah.
But I didn't know if you would go on the other side, because I know you were comfortable under 6 with Utah. Is it still comfortable with Utah at 6?
For it to be the only way I get around on UCLA in this one is if I got 7 with the hook. I would need 7.5 to go the other way.
Gotcha.
Yeah, again, just because of my trepidations with Moore in Utah. But if either or especially if Rising was back, then I wouldn't take the 7.5 with UCLA. Then I go all the way up to 10 on that one with Utah or whatever. But yeah, we're still going to lay it here because I think Dante Moore is going to turn the ball over a couple times in that game.
All right, this is going to be a big game. This is our final of the morning after, early afternoon games. Everyone's going to have their eyes on it. It's Colorado and Oregon. Colorado came in 18th. Oregon was 13th. They're both 3-0. There's a little bit of value, but there are injuries in Colorado. Their defense played like garbage. Colorado's did. It really had to. Sador just played it up in the second half, obviously. But this is still a big line. Your system is still in favor of more value, but do you want to touch this right now with the Hunter injury and everything going on? It's 19. I think your system has around 21.
Yeah, no, I've been in on Colorado. I bet on them each game so far. So we're 2-1 against the spread, but we cast some money line tickets and whatnot. This is the game where I can't, and maybe I should have gotten off the island last week, but I like that matchup. Colorado State just played really well, but this game, there's no value on Colorado. This is the first game of the season where my system is not showing value on them. You mentioned that my line on that game was Oregon minus 21.5. And if you bake in the Travis Hunter injury, it's a little bit above that. I might be toggling that thing closer to 24. Oregon has looked really, really good this year. And I love this Colorado team, but again, like we were mentioning at the top, you lose, or Dion mentioned last night, you lose Travis Hunter, you're losing 2 stars right there. And Colorado has a couple other injuries to keep an eye on. The current updates on those, Slusher, they need to see if they can get Slusher back, that nickel defender. He's been out with an undisclosed injury. McCaskill ain't going to be back for this thing, but they've been able to make do without him. But yeah, the big injury there is Travis Hunter. Under 20, I just don't think you can bet Colorado here. Even where the number is, it would have. I just don't think Colorado's a bet this week.
Yeah, and it was, you said 19. I even see some 18s that are going out there. So, it's a little bit of a sinking ship as far as how fun it's been to bet Colorado. This will probably be the biggest test to see how competitive they're going to be against a team like Oregon. This is a huge, huge matchup that we've got going down. I want to remind everybody that to subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel. Hit subscribe so you're notified anytime we're live, because there are some incredible shows that are going down here with Thor. You got Thor, Mike Farrell, and Scott Bogman on Wednesdays that are taking a look at the slate. And then you can jump in on Saturday mornings where Thor and Mike are rocking all your questions, best bets, Thor's hammer, where's Farrell's fade? You got all of that. That is 10 a.m. Eastern, correct?
Yes, 10 a.m. Eastern to 11:30 Eastern.
Look at me rocking the right time. Just got to get that implanted in the system, my friend. But make sure that you guys are subscribed so you're notified when they go live, because you don't want to miss it. You want to have the best edge you can when making your bets in college football for week 4. All right, let's go to the afternoon games. We're going to jump in to Arkansas. Arkansas is 2-1 going up against which was number 14 LSU. LSU's 2-1. There's a little bit of line value. LSU, I think it ended up being a really good bet this past weekend. So you talk to me about where the bet is, if there's a bet, LSU Arkansas.
So my line is LSU minus 15.9, but it's not factoring in the Rocket Sanders injury. That's why this thing is 17.5 in the market. I think that's a fair line. Arkansas without Rocket Sanders, I mean, you've seen it yesterday against BYU, where it sort of becomes a one-man show with KJ Jefferson on that offense. And KJ Jefferson, like, he's solid. You know, he's a solid player. He's an interesting player, but he's not one of those guys that can do it on his own, right? Like, he's the big load as a runner, but if you don't have Rocket Sanders there for the defense to be afraid of and stuff like it just becomes straightforward. And then KJ Jefferson's he's never been an elite passer. We're still waiting for him to make the jump up as a passer. And so it's tough for Arkansas to flip their game script to, like, we're just going to throw in this game. We're gonna throw, because you would be concerned about Jefferson putting it up that many times, whatever. LSU defense, which badly, of course, struggled in the game everyone watched against Florida State. I watched all the game yesterday against Mississippi State. That LSU defense was way, way better in that game. Now, of course, it's, you're playing Mississippi State's offense that was switching from, is in that transition from the air raid to that RPO, more run heavy type system, whatever. But LSU totally got after them in that one. And one of the encouraging things, like a micro sort of thing, as far as that goes, is initially the usage of Harold Perkins this year. It got criticism, and deservedly so. Playing him as an off-ball linebacker, keeping him away from the ball. Sometimes they'd be lining him up like 10 yards away from the ball and different stuff like that when you wanted to see Perkins unleash more. Yesterday, I thought their usage of him was way more interesting. And so maybe they're starting to get it. They're still moving him around, and some people would nitpick that and just say, keep him on the edge every single play and just attack. But some of the things they were doing with Harold Perkins yesterday, he was giving them value in things outside of that, which before it was just taking value away the further you're moving them away from the ball. One of the really interesting things I thought they did with him yesterday, so Mississippi State was trying to do all these. Will Rogers does not have a ton of arm strength. He's way more comfortable with those quick hitters. Mississippi State was trying to manufacture offense by doing these quick hit and throws to the outside, the slot guy, whatever, screens as well, on the outside, different stuff like that. LSU sent Harold Perkins out to become the nickel defender to shut that down. They're like, no, you're not going to do that. And so now all of a sudden, Mississippi State couldn't gain yards there, right? Like Perkins would either break the thing up right away. It's because it's not like running downfield and coverage with your back to the quarterback. You see everything right in front of you. It's a concept that goes second after the snap or whatever. And if the guy corralled the ball, Perkins nailed him right away. So Perkins just took that away. If you're going to make Harold Perkins, you're going to do that thing of like, we're going to move him around. We're going to make him a chest. That's what you want him doing. Whatever the offense wants to do, no, Harold's going to shut that thing down. And then you move him to the edge rusher when you have to, whatnot. That's something to keep an eye on going forward. They squeezed a lot more value out of Perkins yesterday. But this one for me, because of that Rocket Sanders injury, he ain't going to be back this week. For me, even though my system was showing that because both teams have full strength, for me, this one would be LSU or pass.
Okay. Pac-12, we've got two top 25 teams, both 3-0, Oregon State, Washington State. Not a whole lot of difference between initial line and where your system has it. Is there a bet you want to take in this Pac-12 action?
This one's tough. Yeah, my line being Oregon State minus 3.7, but the caveat I need to give to everyone out there is Washington State in Pullman. I've said this on past shows, in Pullman, one of the best home against the spread records over the last decade. Very, very very, very difficult place to play. So is Corvallis. If this thing was flipped around, it'd be sort of the other way. We seen Washington State ambush Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, and they've been way better to this point than I thought that they would be. This one it's really close to the margins. If you like Oregon State, this would probably be the time to bet it. But I will also understand if a lot of people are on the home dog this week with Wazoo, because they're live, for sure. I just don't think I'll be able to bet this one, but it's one where I'll be early in the week at least. It's one that I'll spend the week handicap and see if I can find anything. But right now, I don't see the line value there.
All right, game of the week with two top 10 teams, Ohio State, Notre Dame. The line opened up at 3.5. I see it around 2.5. Your system has it as a pick'em. 7-0 combined record between these two teams. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the most electric college football player. When you watch him in open field, it's not fair. So. Yeah. OSU minus 2.5 to 3.5 somewhere in the books. You see it as a pick 'em. Do you avoid? Do you just jump right in? Where are you playing it?
This is one. Well, let me go the opposite on this one, and I'll give you my take, my handicap, and then we'll hit the line, projected the line movement. I like Notre Dame in this game, and so for me, if I can get over, it's 3.5 right now. I'm taking that. My system says this game is a coin flip. It has Ohio State minus 0.6 points. So right there in coin flip land, I think Notre Dame's winning this game. I don't like this Ohio State team a ton. I still have questions about their quarterback play. I don't care about last week. Western Kentucky's defense stinks this year. They lost everybody. We knew that Ohio State was going to tear them up. I'm not changing my opinion on Ohio State based on that. The team whose opinion I changed on over the summer was Notre Dame. When Notre Dame went out and got Hartman, and then, their defense, all three levels, arguably top 15, maybe even top 10 units in the nation. They have the secondary nobody's going to shut down Marvin Harrison totally, but they at least got the guys back there where you can address Harrison, Egbuka, et cetera. And the offensive line for Ohio State, the last 3 NFL guys, they're going to have their hands full here. Against that Notre Dame front seven. We'll have to see how that goes. But they're going to have to hold up, because I don't trust McCord as far as I can throw him if he's under duress this whole game. And then you got to throw into that Notre Dame secondary. So, yeah, for me, this one's Notre Dame. But the thing early in the week when you're betting these things, it's not just your opinion on the game. You're also sort of playing a pop psychologist with the market, because even though I like Notre Dame, could this line get to 4? I'd like it a lot more if it was 4. Like it a lot more, even more than that if it was 4.5. So it becomes do you fire now, right? Thinking the market's going to be betting Ohio State early in the week, you get a little more value, or is it the other way around? Do you wait for that, or do you fire now because you're projecting that people are going to be on Notre Dame as the home dog? And 3.5, obviously a way more advantageous number than 3. So you're really on the margins here and playing pop psychologist. But probably the way I'll do it personally is, fire a half of a unit or something like that on, on Notre Dame now, and then sprinkle a little bit on their buddy line right now as well. And then if that thing, we get it up, then I'll be placing another unit bet if I can get more value on it, but just close the loop. If not, if it stays the same number, we'll just add to where we would have been initially in terms of the dollar amount.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about, if you were going to hit money line. So that's a great breakdown of where you're going to go with it. Next game up, the line in your system are lockstep. Iowa versus number 7 Penn State, or coming in number 7 Penn State. I was locked into that Penn State game because I bet them, and Penn State looked garbage. They just did not look good. It was crazy how ineffective their offense was. So you see a line like this, I'm curious at where you're going to take this one, because it could have been a letdown situation, whatever, but I was thoroughly unimpressed with Penn State. But Iowa, Penn State, where's the bet? Is there a bet?
Yeah, we did end up getting the cover in that one.
We did, luckily.
With Penn State and well, James Franklin always helps with that. James Franklin's always looking after our best interests when we buy a ticket in Penn State. But yeah, like initially, especially first half, I was with you. I would have liked Penn State's offense to be a bit more aggressive. In the way that Kansas's was the Friday before when they played Illinois. That Illinois defense just lost so much talent, and then you have all these new faces, and it's like if you have the ability to put those, for instance, what Kansas did the whole game, they put the safeties into conflict every single play, right? And so like you had these new safeties that were like and then all of a sudden one false step, you got a one-on-one shot down the field. Or the other way, and now the intermediate's open, whatnot. They were just confusing those safeties all afternoon. I would have liked Penn State to do a little bit more of that. They still were able to get, not only the win, the against the spread win. The thing that you were impressed with was their defense, although we've talked about the Illinois offense where it can just evolve into Altmaier running around, stuff like that. This is a very interesting game. Iowa has historically done, at least in recent history, pretty decent going to Happy Valley on these whiteout night games. Some teams really struggle with that. Iowa does not. The atmosphere in Kinnick, the night games, it's sort of the same thing. Iowa doesn't really care about that sort of stuff, and they're going to force teams to play their game, which if you're an underdog playing Iowa, you love, because they sort of drag you up, and the game becomes closer. But the favorite teams, the heavy favorites, the double-digit favorites, those are the ones that have to be more concerned, because you're not going to be able to roll out your whole offense. And this is another data point for why I would have preferred Penn State to be doing more stuff early on, first full season of Alar, when you're playing a defense that can be had deep and different stuff like that, ripping some of those throws, whatnot, see what Allaire's got, because next week we might need that. Iowa's defense is really, really, really good. Now, obviously the offensive and their special teams really good too. Up until this past week, the offense have been an issue. They put up some points on Western Michigan. The thing I thought was funny is the Ferences, they've always been sort of anti James Franklin in terms of being pretty classy as far as kneeling the ball out at the end of games. Like sometimes it would frustrate me because they'd kneel it out at the literally 1 yard line if they could get it down there. But now Brian Ferentz is going the other way. Brian Ferentz punched in a touchdown late against Western Michigan. Which infuriated me, even though, big Iowa fan, because that's what lost me my under ticket, which seemed like a lock that entire afternoon. But Brian Ferentz is like, no, I got to get to 325 points to keep my job. So they punched a touchdown in. I'm still concerned about that Iowa offense. My system's right around where this line is, but for me, this one would be Iowa or stay away if that number is 14 or above, just because of how good that defense is. They're going to be able to give Penn State's offense some problems, and I think that one skews closer, as far as the end result.
Do you think the under might be in play in that game too, with just how piss poor Penn State was? Again, it could have been a look ahead situation. Like, I don't think I could bet. I would be more comfortable with Iowa on this, or I just wonder if that under is in play. I was trying to look for it. I don't see the early. I don't know if you have an early one on it.
The number I'm seeing is 40.5. So
Oof.
the bookmakers and the early bettors out there in the market have already put that tax on you if you want to go under. I think that's fair. My system total in that one is 43 points. So it's just hard to feel like you're getting value on that early in the week, whatnot. I definitely wouldn't bet the over. I'll put it that way. But I would have liked to have seen a different number dropped to give me value going under. I mean, even if that thing had been 45 coming out the gate, 45 and a half, ideally, we would have been under today. We would have been buying the ticket, but at the 40 and a half thing, for me, that's a stay away early in the week.
All right, we've got one more on the big slate, and then we've got a smaller look at some games that interest Thor or have some potential really fun line change going on. UCF, who is 3-0, going up against Kansas State, who is 2-1, and this is the second biggest, at least of the big slate games, as far as your line to what publicly dropped I see as far as value goes. So what do you think in this one?
Yeah, and first, let me close the loop on the Penn State Iowa game really quick, because I should mention Luke Lachey, by far Iowa's best receiving target, the tight end. He's suffered a leg injury yesterday, and the only thing I've been able to find out about is out indefinitely. It didn't look great. So there's a decent shot he's going to be out in this game. And then I was also dealing with running back injuries right now. Caleb Johnson didn't play in the last game. He had looked sluggish before that. And then the redshirt freshman, they have Jay-Sean Patterson, running back, who had looked really good the week before. He is now nicked up. So they do have LaShawn there. That he had a good game yesterday, went over 100 yards against Western Michigan. But if those other two guys are out, LaShawn, he's going to have to do everything, as far as the running back touches. And Iowa could be down on the receiving weapons if Luke Lachey is out. And if Luke Lachey is out, look for the overs on Eric All props when that comes out, because Iowa always throws the tight end if he's not there. I had to close the loop on that one. As far as Kansas State and the UCF one, is it, right?
Yep.
That's when, yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so 7 is what I'm seeing out there in the market right now. My opening line on that is Kansas State minus 4.7. For me, if you're getting UCF with 7 points there, that's a fire today. I was on Kansas State last weekend on Saturday. I made a mistake. I thought this Kansas State team was a little bit better. I certainly thought the Missouri team was worse. A Missouri team who their first 2 games against Patsy's, their offensive line had badly struggled. Brady Cook had badly struggled. And all of a sudden, the Kansas State coming into town, they cleaned that up. And Brady Cook played actually pretty good. Like I was pretty impressed with him, but the offensive line played way better too. So you're wondering about Kansas State then, a team that you have the foundation there now with Kleiman, a really good developer, stuff like that. But they had lost some star power over the offseason. The Felix, I still don't know how to say his name, the edge rusher that went to Kansas City in the first round. You lose that with the edge rush. They had lost a couple cornerbacks, Julius Brents being the big one and whatnot. And then, of course, their bell cow on offense in Deuce Vaughn. So, you're sort of wondering about that. But, they were a ranked team top 20 heading into last week. And Will Howard got nicked up in that game. So that's something you're going to want to look at. I think he was able to finish it out. But they were putting in that Avery Johnson kid to scramble around more, but they don't trust, the 4-star quarterback. They don't trust him to throw yet. So, if Howard is depreciated at all, or if he comes out of the game, it's just going to turn into Avery Johnson scrambling around, whatnot. I actually like this UCF team. I think this UCF team is pretty good. They have a ton of speed, and they stress you on the perimeter. The only thing you're concerned about on that side is John Rice Plumlee, as always, is injured. So he's going to be out for this game. And so, you just have to sort of gauge that on that side. But I love their team speed, and I'm a little bit troubled with what I've seen of Kansas State. So, like I said, especially at 7.5, I'd be taking UCF, but even at a 7, buying that ticket as well, probably.
All right, so I got 2 sets here. These are the smaller games that have some potential line change, that are showing line change, that are of interest. I'm going to do 2 groups of 3, and I'm going to give them to you. First up, these were actually ones that you and I beforehand were kind of talking about. Some others were just me perusing the Thor system. You got BYU, Kansas. I see around 5 points of Thor adjusted line value. Arizona, Stanford, we've got over 2 points. And Georgia Southern, Ball State has 4.5 points of line value. You don't have to hit every single one if you want. I wanted to throw those out here, but pick apart those 3 as you would like. BYU, Kansas, Arizona, Stanford, Georgia Southern, Ball State.
Yeah, well, when you're telling people that there's 5 points of line value that BYU Kansas game, they're probably like, oh, Nystrom's got Kansas minus 2 touchdowns. No, it's the other way. I got value on BYU in that one, even though I'm the biggest rock chalk homer in the world. I was a little surprised, honestly, with how high that line dropped. And maybe it's because the bookmakers didn't stay up late last night watching the Kansas Nevada game, or maybe they had their eyes glued to Colorado State. Kansas did not look great in that game. Now, it was a weird spot. You had to travel back the time zone or 2. Is Reno, is that Pacific or is that Mountain Time? That's
Pacific, right? Yeah, when it gets into November, because I'm in that like time zone-y weirdness, or you know what? Vegas might be, God, I don't know if Vegas doesn't follow us. You know what? Vegas actually might be Mountain Standard. So I think that's an hour behind you, 2 behind Eastern.
Yeah, well, either way, super late kickoff, right? Especially on the body clock of the Kansas players. And a weird spot playing the non-con on, it's sort of like the way lesser version of Alabama going to South Florida was Kansas late last night going to Reno, but Kansas didn't look great in that game. And maybe it was destined to be a flat spot, but Jalen Daniels, their quarterback, he had looked way better in the game before that when he came back against Illinois. In the receiving core, they weren't making quite as many plays. There was a couple drops there, but Daniel specifically, and he got nicked up at one point. Finish out the game. I don't think that's going to be a problem, whatever. But obviously, that's a kid whose game he puts himself in danger sometimes, just as far as like inviting the pass rushers into his grill against Illinois. The first round projected guy, defensive tackle for Illinois, Jawan Newton, seemed to have Daniels dead to rights in the end zone because Daniels sort of invited him in, then just ran around him, whatever. But that's something to keep an eye on. But just as far as this spread goes, like I said, I'm surprised. It's BYU coming off the upset win over Arkansas. And this game now, all of a sudden, it's 8.5 against a Kansas team that just literally barely got by Nevada. They needed a late score in that one to win that game. I think this line is too high. As much as I hate to say it as a Rock Chalk alum, at 8.5, it's just too high. This thing should be under 7 points. My line on it's Kansas minus 3.7.
Was there anything else on those other two? You had specifically brought up the Ball State one, the 8.5 to 4, about 4.5 point differential. Georgia Southern, Ball State, Arizona, Stanford. Those two. Is there any bet that you would try to lock in early on either one?
The Georgia Southern, I felt like that line was too high. Georgia Southern on the road there at 8.5 opening. My line on it's Georgia Southern minus 4 at Ball State. Ball State, they lost guys in the portal this offseason, but they were able to address, bringing veterans in at those key positions, whatnot. I don't think the discrepancy of these two teams is that high, where you're talking like double digits on a neutral is basically what that line implies. I don't know about that. Georgia Southern, I love Clay Helton. I love the whole thing down there. My concern with them is Davis Pickle-Bryn, the former Tulsa quarterback. He has some tools, but he makes really wonky decisions. And when he was at Tulsa, he was a turnover machine. And you were hoping that, he goes into the air raid with Helton there, that a similar thing would happen to what happened the year before when they got Kyle Van Treese from Buffalo, who I'd never been impressed with in his career. And then all of a sudden it was like the Midas touch and Van Treese threw for over 4,000 yards. You were hoping it was going to be something similar with Pickle-Bryn. But I haven't been impressed with Pickle-Bryn so far. He's doing Pickle-Bryn things, turning the ball over and whatnot. And this Ball State team, you have a coaching staff that's been there for a while, different stuff like that. They at least play assignment football on defense. If Pickle-Bryn is making his wonky decisions again, they're going to turn him over. I just think that line is too high. What was the other one, Welsh?
The other one was just the Arizona Stanford one. Just if you didn't have any big thoughts on it.
No. So my line in that one is Arizona minus 11.2. I was surprised that line came out in the single digits. Arizona took care of business against UTEP, slapped them around a little bit. Their passing game looks really good. Jaden Delore is a good quarterback, and he has a dual threat element as well. But like that kid, all summer he worked on adding more, over the offseason, on adding more muscle. Showed up a little bit bigger. He's always had talent and skill as a passer, and now and a dual threat thing as well. But now you're more fortified for the season and whatnot, and maybe he ticked the arm strength up just a little bit. And their receivers are awesome. Between McMillan, one of the best recruits they've ever signed in the history of the school, a 5-star receiver, and then Cowing, the slot, the quick guy that they had gotten from UTEP. So it was sort of their revenge game for Cowing in the last one. Really like their offense. Their offensive line actually is better than people think. They have a couple NFL guys on their offensive line, and Michael Wiley's a solid running back where you can also throw him the ball, different stuff like that. You're concerned about their defense. But Stanford, I don't know, man. I'm not sure why Vegas is showing them disrespect of putting this thing in the single digits. Yesterday, late last night, maybe they missed this. Troy Taylor, the coach at Stanford, was coaching against his former team. Welcome FCS Sacramento State into town. Troy Taylor knows all those players. He recruited them all. And Sacramento State goes in there and beats Stanford 30-23. That opening win that Stanford had at Hawaii is looking more like a mirage, or more like Hawaii's defense is just that hapless. And that was the game where Urasek was running around and doing stuff and whatnot. I was impressed with the play calling for Stanford in that game. then they get slapped around by USC. You probably couldn't do much with that. But in this game where you're playing Sacramento State, I didn't love what they were doing philosophically. It seemed like a smash spot for Taylor, but they weren't throwing the ball to Urasek, who's by far their best offensive player. I didn't really get that. And then EJ Smith finally gets going on the ground, but you were giving a bunch of carries to other guys as well. I was just really confused by that. So I'm definitely down on Stanford. I like this Arizona team. This line should be in the double digits. So if it's under that, I'll be buying a ticket today, and maybe those out there should consider that as well.
The last three, I'm just going to throw them out and just pick one. Pick one that you might be most interested to pay attention to. Army, Syracuse. Your system actually came out with a bigger number, but there was an injury. You've already adjusted it. There was a little bit of a value there. Liberty, Florida International. There was around a 3-point differential between what posted and what you've got. And North Carolina, Pittsburgh was one that you had thrown out to me. If you had to jump on one that's the most intriguing to either watch or bet now or pay attention to a line, which of those three are you locked into?
I would bet North Carolina. My line being closer to -8, -6 right now. If that thing's under 7, I want that one. I made a mistake back in Pitt this past weekend against West Virginia. That Pitt team is not very good because Jerkovic is not very good. They struggle to throw the ball, and you don't have the dynamite running back like you did last year with Abanaconda. Now you just have some like decent guys, like Hammond, stuff like that, but they just don't have the juice on offense anymore. So that's the issue with that one. The Syracuse game against Army, thing to keep an eye on. Very unfortunate news. Aranda Gadsden, the big slot dynamic guy that Syracuse had, is out for the season. Unfortunately, he has a Liz Frank injury. We had talked about his injury a little bit on the shows late in the week last week. They got the worst news on him. So that's something you need to keep in mind with Syracuse. My system showing value on Syracuse in that game against Army. But again, you have to keep keep that one in mind. And the last one, what was the last one again, Welsh?
The last one was it the Liberty Florida International?
Liberty. I always do that to you. But that one, I think that's too much respect for Liberty early in the week, making them a 13-point favorite against Florida International. Florida International now has won a couple games. I think people had seen that one game where they couldn't throw in the week 0 because there was no other games on, and their quarterback threw for like 4 yards on like 20 attempts or something, but they have since gotten him out of there and put in different quarterbacks, maybe that they didn't think were ready, but have certainly been way better and have given Florida International at least a passing element. I was on Florida International last week getting 10.5 or 11 against UConn. They went in and upset the fighting Jim Mora's. This is another game where you can potentially look at Florida International. I'm not sure that they can beat Liberty, but Liberty's getting too much respect in the marketplace right now because yesterday they went out and decked a really bad Buffalo team. Florida International, coached by Mike McIntyre, they always have good game plans. Liberty, on the other hand, Jamie Chadwell comes in, but you're in this big system transition. Didn't matter as much against a team like Buffalo, but I wonder about going down there to Miami to play this team. 13 points or above is just too many points, in my opinion. So I'd be on Florida International, that one.
Thor Nystrom. Make sure you follow him at ThorKU. You can check him out on Wednesday with Mike Farrell and Scott Bogman right here on the Betting Pros YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed so you're notified. You can take a look at what all the bets are looking like midweek after we have got some lines settling. And then you can come back on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern with him and Mike Farrell just breaking down all the stuff with the Thor Hammer bet, the Farrell fade. Make sure you're locked in. You don't want to miss it. As well, you want to track and see what Thor is doing in real time. Download the Betting Pros Pick Tracker. Download the app on iOS or Android, and you can follow Thor, tons of other experts, and just people that on our crazy hot streaks. You can set customized notifications. You can see who people are betting. Get it today, Betting Pros. One of the best tracking apps out there.
It's a really good app.
So much more. Yeah, it's got news. It's got the articles. The articles are on there. It's just, I really highly suggest it. Even if you're not into the crazy world of it. I've told people this a million times. You want to figure out how good you are in the world, and you can't get yourself into the crazy betting market, go and track your bets. You can do that with the Betting Pros app. It's a very beneficial thing.
Well, just one comment on that. So, this is way pre-apps or smartphones, whatever. I started sports betting when I was a freshman at the University of Kansas. I got my butt kicked the first year, when I was 19 or whatever. After that, I became like I need to, because I wasn't going to stop, but it's like, I need to win, go for it. So I started tracking all my own stuff, all these different categories in a notebook for every single team I bet, all my picks and like how I do and whatnot. Now it's so easy. And And that app, this is going to sound like me shilling for it, but it's not. I actually think that app is really, really good. I would recommend it to people out there because, seeing the metrics, where are you going wrong? Where are you going right? It's a really good app. Plus you get the notifications and the line movement, different stuff like that. Like I want it at this price. If it hits there at a book, you get the notification. So it's a really good app.
100% agree. Hey, when I can go in and I can see what am I doing better with, spreads, over unders, money lines, props, it tells me the whole thing. So yeah, it sounds shilly, but it's just another tool to make you better.
Plus with baseball playoffs coming up, you need to see Welsh's picks in there too. So you got to follow Welsh when he's punching them baseball bets in.
I got to pick it up a little bit on that prop market. I'm going to do that for sure. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Hopefully your bets are glorious here for week 4, and hopefully we got you locked in. Thor Nystrom, Thor KU on Twitter. You can follow me at @IsItTheWelsh, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Betting Pros Early Line Look podcast. Later, friends.